Hey, this is Sully for Antisocial News Body Count Report, and today is Wednesday, October the 18th, 2017. And the reason why this is called the Body Count Report is not because I am a ghoul who just likes gore and death around the world, but it's because I only like news. I only really consider things news that actually affect human life, which is why I take interest in real news stories around the world. I do not care about politics. I do not care about petty emotional squabbles that most American news is. Who sits for what statue offends people. I really only care about life or death situations. So that's why I like to look at news stories from around the world. That's what I do here on the Body Count Report, because I would generally ask my friends when they would be talking about some big news story, I'd ask what the body count was, and a lot of times they would be very confused, and then I would basically explain them like, I'm asking that because I'm kind of sarcastically pointing out that your story that you're upset about is not real news. Okay. Now that you get the background, let's go ahead and jump into it. Lanao officials face bigger challenges. This is a follow-up to the Maute Islamic State Caliphate affiliated terrorist organization defeat in Marawi city in Lanao del Sur in the Philippines. Really incredible story. I've been following it for months. All I can really tell you is look at the previous videos that I have done on this, including a special report on Marawi. Yesterday's body count report link list was full of amazing videos and links that I found about this conflict. Basically, a city of 200,000 people, which is like the capital of most states in the U.S., was taken over by an I.S.I.S allegiant terrorist organization called Maute in the Philippines. And after months and months of fighting, hundreds of people killed on either side of the conflict. The death toll was in the low thousands. It was and refugees spilling out into the surrounding areas, and they finally conquered the city back. But there's still a lot of bad guys still in the area. So learn about the conflicts that the Philippines are now facing in the aftermath of their victory in Marawi. Moving on, Islamic State follow-up. They've got the full death tolls here on India, Times of India. Now, I'm very specifically bringing this story up because of this number. 1,130 civilians. Pretty horrific. Basically, a little over a third of the people killed there were civilians. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because we're going to be talking about the Rohingya crisis, and I want to bring up the reporting style here, where we're talking about ISIS, we're showing the numbers here and here, and I want to show the difference between biased reporting and unbiased reporting. So moving on, you can see this link. Times of India does some good bare bones reporting on world issues. Al Jazeera reporting here: the Taliban kills scores in Afghanistan's Paktia and Ghazni. So if you hadn't heard about this, I talked about this in yesterday's body count report about the 71 people killed in Afghanistan by Taliban attack. Pretty horrific. Pretty horrific movement back towards back towards the front page there for the Taliban. They're definitely acting out with a lot of. I think they're taking advantage of increased terrorist presence in the area, in the region, with the Pakistan-India border crisis heating up, and I feel like they're I don't know. I feel like they're getting away with more stuff. I could be wrong on this, but it's just how it's looking. Sad to see areas moving backwards here. Now here's a story that I have mentioned Togo in the past, but this isn't a direct follow up to a story. There's been protests in Togo recently over arrests of opposition leaders, and the military has been cracking down really hard on the protesters. So check out the video here and pictures on africanews.com regarding the story out of Togo in West Africa. This is, and if you're not familiar, this is a francophonic country in West Africa, Togo, run by the Nasingbe dynasty. Even though there's supposed to be a democracy, but it is not. It is a dictatorship. Moving on, check this story out. Thank you, africanews.com. Good reporting. We have UN Security Council condemns Myanmar for Rohingya violence. Suu Kyi to speak. September 19th. Yes, so tomorrow, September 19th. Whoops. Dug up an old story here. How did that pop up? This is in Asia Pacific. Oh wow. Okay. So apparently Korea Times doesn't update their Asia Pacific thing here that often. So I likely have well, that's a blooper. I am going to I'm gonna take an L on this one, and I'm gonna keep recording because I do this in one shot. All right, I will include that in the link list. It's an older story, but it's just showing the reaction to Burma's unstoppable murder of Muslims, completely unprovoked, and there was nothing at all happening anywhere that would have incited any violence against Muslims. But then all of a sudden, the Myanmar government just randomly started killing Muslims. That's what we've been told, and that is the narrative that the United States is even buying into 100%. I don't know what you're doing here. There you go. Voice of America reporting that Tillerson, we hold Myanmar military leadership responsible for Rohingya crisis. Now this is a it's got sonnet. It looks like a sonnet here. This is one of those things I have to say. If there are war crimes, I hope anyone in charge of a military expeditionary force that willfully engages in war crimes is held accountable. I hope the soldiers themselves are held to account for any military violations of the Geneva Convention of human rights. Sexual assault and other things like that are absolutely reprehensible. One of the things that bothers me, though, is when there's a story about the Myanmar crisis that doesn't talk about the Arakan Rakhine Salvation Army, which most of these don't. And I have to say, this is an unverified news source. No one's told me that that the Irrawaddy is a legitimate news agency or a legitimate news blog, but I found their reporting on this subject interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and include this in here. Ready to fight again. The homeless Muslims still backing Myanmar insurgency. So keep that disclaimer. If somebody can let me know if the Irrawaddy is a legitimate news outlet, I would be happy to continue sourcing them. But I just wanted to let people see that there is an insurgency here. I.S.I.S is a ruthless Islamist extremist movement that wants to create an Islamic republic in northern Rakhine. Okay, so check this article out, and if you think, well, I've never heard of the Irrawaddy, why should I read anything from them? Okay, well, here's Jerusalem Post, and this is a very interesting story because this is a few days ago, but very interesting. Rohingya insurgent ceasefire ends in Myanmar with no report of attacks. The Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army announced a ceasefire from September 10th in order, they said, to facilitate aid deliveries to Rakhine State, where their attacks on security forces on October 25th triggered a ferocious government crackdown. I think that kind of sums up my frustration right here. Is you have August 25th, I.S.I.S attacks security forces in Myanmar. Then they get a crackdown on them, and then you have this little angry guy here going, oh, this is horrible, what's going on? And nobody's talking about the fact that there is an organized, ruthless Islamist extremist movement that triggered this situation. Everyone is only talking about the horrible, sometimes with only hearsay evidence reported human rights violations of the Myanmar government. We talk about the Myanmar government's horrible human rights violations, and some of them are claims, just word-of-mouth claims by somebody in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, and that is God's word. That is the honest gospel that we must believe, even though it's not really how news works. Look, this is a well-formatted website, and even though I'm just a guy with a crude news title, on YouTube here, I still look at this and say, hey, I'd like to give a disclaimer. I haven't checked this source out, and yet the news will the CBS and those guys will put a camera in front of a lady's face in Cox's Bazar and have her tell a completely unverified story, and they'll report it as fact. And then they will also not mention the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. They won't mention them at all, which would kind of be like, if you're just going to talk about the civilian impact and not talk about the Islamic extremists that led to the conflict, it would kind of be like if we were talking about Raqqa and we said the U.S. invade Raqqa, killing 1,130 civilians. The U.S. over the past few months have been attacking a city in Syria called Raqqa, and while they've been attacking this city in Raqqa, they've killed over 1,000 civilians. You see what would be upsetting about that reporting? You see why that reporting would be annoying to somebody affected by ISIS? Because I'm not mentioning ISIS. I'm not mentioning that there's a terrorist hideout there. There's terrorists holed up there. There's terrorists who are enacting terrorist attacks on other people there. And I would like to point out the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army was not just attacking security forces. They were apparently mass murdering Hindus. There's mass graves of Hindus found in Rohingya Muslim territories that were uncovered by the Myanmar authorities. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from the Myanmar government regarding this situation. The UN Security Council is basically trying to figure out if this is genocide or not. And I hope if they find the Myanmar soldiers having been willfully acting in vulgar and unchivalrous ways towards civilian populations, I hope those soldiers get the harshest penalties allowed under law. But also, I want the situation to be looked at fairly, and I want the minority Hindu population to be treated fairly, which they have not gotten the same amount of press as the minority Muslim population, which, as I've also pointed out, there is essentially no such thing as a minority Muslim population. Muslims are more than 1/6 of the planet. Burma is less than 1% of the planet. All the Burmese or Myanmar people on the planet, add them all up, it's still less than 1% of the Earth's population. Muslims, on the other hand, are somewhere around the ballpark of 1/6 to a quarter of the Earth's population. So there's, when you look at it like that, there's not really a Muslim minority, which also lends the thought that there isn't fair reporting on the subject, because the people reporting on it have cozier monetary relations with Muslim countries or Muslims within their country, as opposed to with the super minority of ethnic Burmese or Myanmar people on the planet. So that's why I made this channel, so we can actually talk about news that isn't being looked at from certain angles. And that's where I want to end this, just giving people a little bit more insight on the Rohingya crisis, on the Myanmar situation. And I hope this has a peaceful resolution. And to the refugees in Cox's Bazar, my heart goes out to you. The conditions there look pretty bad. And to the world community looking at this, I'm glad you see that human life matters, but I want us to make sure we are looking at this from all sides. The extremists are not welcome. They should never be welcome, and I want people to acknowledge that. All right, this is Sully for Antisocial News Body Count Report, and this has been my show for Wednesday, October the 18th. Please like or dislike. Let me know how you feel with a little thumbs up or a thumbs down. Share, comment, subscribe. I think you know what I want, and I will upload tomorrow. Thank you.